This is the hose holder that I made a few years ago. My wife wants one for the house, but she thinks that this one looks a little bit clunky. So I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to try to make it a little more elegant. I'm making this one out of roasted oak. These boards were sent to me by the Woodworker Source. They're not paying me anything, but they did send me the boards, so I wanted to make that clear. If you want to know more about roasted oak, I'll have a link in the description below. I'm starting with the back, and I'll cross cut it at 15.5 inches. Then measuring up from the bottom 2 inches, I'll cut a 45-degree angle on each side. I'll put a cove bit in the router and add a decorative edge. The next step is to rip and then cross cut the front to size. I'll use a gallon paint can to make the round at the top of the front. First, I'll measure down from the top, make a mark at 2 inches on each side, and then hold the paint can on those marks and trace a line. This is one of those fun kind of Saturday morning projects that's really useful. If you'd like to build one for your home, I'll have a link to the plans down in the description below. I just put the roundover bit back in the router, and I'm going to put a roundover at the top of this shape on both sides. And I'm going to measure up from the bottom, make a mark at 7 inches on all 4 sides, and stop the roundover at that mark. I wanted to take a minute and kind of give you a little look behind the scenes. This is the garden in the front yard. I did a lot of work to this path in the early spring. Probably going to post a video on that. And this is me trying to get a decent shot of the hose holder for the thumbnail. These are poppies, peonies. My wife plants the garden. I do a lot of the work, I'll say. And these are the planters. This is a fun project from just about a month ago. I've got the project video on my channel. The plans are on my site. I've also got plans for the garden bench back there. So I hope that you'll check them out. A lot of fun. And I'll have links to everything in the description below. Let's get back to the project we're working on now. With the front and back finished, the next step is to make the sides. I'll rip them to width on the table saw and then use the miter saw to cross cut them to length. I'll use the same roundover bit to soften the outside edge of each side so it doesn't cut into the hose. Now I can attach the sides to the front, and I'll attach the sides with 2 evenly spaced screws, and I'll pre-drill and countersink the holes so I can fill the holes with wooden plugs. I've got the parts clamped in position so the side is flush with the side of the front, and I'm also flush here at the bottom. Now I'm going to drill pilot holes so I don't break the screws. I've got the cove bit in the router again, and I'll put a cove profile on the sides and bottom, and I'll measure up from the bottom and make a mark at 6 3/4, and that'll be my stop point on both sides. When I come in with the router, I'm going to come in a little before that line and then back up to the line, and then I'll go around and stop at this line. After adding the cove detail to the front, I also added it to the bottom of the 2 sides. Now I'm going to measure down from the top and make a mark at 7 on both sides, and I'll place the front piece with the top of the side at that 7 mark. Make a mark at the top and bottom, and this is just the placement of this front piece. Next, I'll use the drill press to drill through the front and drill 2 evenly spaced pilot holes on each side. Now I'll flip the piece over and countersink the holes from the back. After applying wood glue, I'll place and clamp the parts in position and then attach them with 1 3/4" stainless steel screws. Now I can make the part to hold the hose nozzle, and I'll start by ripping it at 1 5/8". After cross-cutting it to size, I'll cut the shapes out on the bandsaw. Clamping a belt sander to the workbench like this is a great way to sand small parts. I'll use the roundover bit again to soften the edges. Stick around to the end to get some helpful tips on how to build this. Just some things that I learned along the way that will help you with your project. I'll also have some footage of the installation of the hose holder to my brick house. After pre-drilling and countersinking holes for the screws, I'll center the part and attach it with 2 2-inch long stainless steel screws. After filling the countersink holes with wooden plugs, I gave it a good sanding, drilled the holes for the mounting hardware, and then finished the hose holder with Total Boat's Danish teak sealer. Okay, well, I'm real happy with the way this turned out, and more important than that, so is my wife. I ended up making 3 of these, and just like any project, I learned and designed on the first one, and the second and third one were much easier. If you're going to build this, I suggest cutting all the parts to size first, then using the roundover bit to do all the roundovers, and then changing the bit to the cove bit. I ended up changing the bit a few times, and it's kind of a waste of time. So you can get all that done and then just assemble the hose holder. As far as the roasted oak, it's nice. It has a nice dark look. If you can't get the roasted oak, just use another hardwood. I would suggest not using a softwood for this project. So other woods would be sapele, white oak, ipe, maybe red grandis, anything but like pine or cedar, because this is going to get a lot of wear and tear and it would potentially break with a softer wood. I will have links to the router bits that I used, also the hose that I like. I'm not sponsored by Zero G, but I really like that hose. I used to be sponsored by them years and years ago, maybe one day again, but it's just a great hose. I'll also have a link to the hose nozzle and of course links to the plans. The plans for this project are at a discounted price right now because they're my hand-drawn plans, and that's the way they'll be until I get a chance to have them turned into professional plans. I'll also have links to the planter plans and all of my project plans on my website. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.